Hey, Stephen Platinum, your friend in wrestling with an every cloud has a platinum lining. So I'll just be honest, the buzz around the Georgia Wrestling History Awards is really strong this year. Makes me happy. I just, right from the jump, I want to thank Nick and Myron, the tapped out guys, and Rob Rod, and especially Larry, of course. We all conferred about whether we were going to do these awards a couple of months ago, and guys like Hankins as well kind of helped us make this decision, and I think it was the right one to go ahead with the awards. And in fact, not drop any categories this year because 2020 has been a bummer of a year, so we want to keep it light. So we're going to have the awards, and we're actually adding promo of the year and match of the year. Rob Rod has set up the website, but just know we're going to let everything play out for 2020 first. Then we're going to start the nomination process. But we've gotten all the mechanics in place as far as taking the nominations, setting up the awards, setting up the voting like we did last year that worked so flawlessly. So it's good stuff, and it's going great. But to kind of capitalize, and since it's going to be, a week and a half before the end of the year, madness, right? This Friday coming up is Christmas. Come check out my wish list. Have I been a good boy? That's none of your business. All I want is good toys. Can I get some Wow. Sorry. Anyway, so what is this freaking crazy video? This video is if we took the Georgia Wrestling History categories but applied them, and it was only my standard. Right? Not taking votes for this stuff, but to look at the national and international wrestling scenes. Yes, international applies. So just to remind you what those categories are, and this is not necessarily the order where I'm going to do them, but it's to get people's juices flowing and get them thinking about the Georgia Wrestling History Awards specifically. And keep in mind that we open it up, so it's not just specifically Georgia things. The SCI a couple of years ago broke that wide open because we just consider it wrestlers that frequently wrestle in the state if they're on your show, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really opened up this year, which is really good news for a group like Pro South, which runs out of Alabama, but really gets most of its coverage from Georgia Wrestling History. And of course, the SCI wasn't able to happen this year, nor was the Southern Honor version of the SCI, and that's a shame, but maybe we'll see those in 2021. But point being, this has opened up to the national things. So you're looking at mostly WWE brands, SmackDown, Raw, NXT, AEW. In theory, Impact would have been opened up for this. In theory, the NWA would have. In theory, Ring of Honor would have. And then also groups internationally, right? Bigger Mexican groups, New Japan, etc., etc., etc. So the categories, there's overall wrestler, of course. And when you look at Georgia, right now, this is just my opinion, it's Joe Black's to lose, right? But there's certainly other wrestlers that have kind of stepped up into prominence. Best Technician Award, right? What are you looking at as far as Georgia goes? That's tough because that's debatable, because you have guys who are great technicians like Corey Hollis, but who tend to not run towards the technical side because he's worked heel. But I don't know. Maybe once you hear who I think should win it nationally, it'll open up the discussion and the interpretation of what technical can be. Joe Black, of course, won it last year. Male performer. I've always been staunch that because it's named sort of after Tommy Rich, it should be a guy whose gimmick work gets the thing over as a male performer. But again, my national pick for this thing might change our definition of that as well. That's why I thought this was such an interesting exercise. There's female performer. The Ted Allen Legends Award. I'm going to pick someone different on the national sort of wrestling scene than you might expect. Tag teamer stable. most improved wrestler, which I think is going to be one of the most hotly contested in Georgia for the Georgia Wrestling History Awards. I mean, when you've got Hold My Beer Hansen, and you've got Tyler Culprin, and you've got Austin Towers, but you could also make an argument for David Ali. I mean, I know who already won it, but again, his rise has continued to be meteoric. So what do you say? I think it's really cool. I think it's really fascinating. The Best Manager or Valet Award, which is one of the few that I'm not sure how hotly contested it's going to be in the Georgia Wrestling History Awards. Though I saw managers who I'd never even heard of were already vying for it. So I'm definitely going to have to check them out. But it's a Matt Hankins thing, right? And I also was impressed with the work that Logan Chase has done as well. Best Promoter Award. Best Booker Award. Now, it's funny because it's much easier to sort of debate and look at the merits of those things in the Georgia scene than it is the national scene. Because if I say, who's the best promoter of the year, you're going to blink a few times, right? Best Promotion. That's pretty self-explanatory. Best Live Event. Best Announcer or Commentator. Best Referee. Feud of the Year. I'm going to go completely wacky with that one because I just think it makes for a more interesting discussion. Match of the Year is going to be the thing that people are going to most look at me and go, the fuck, Steve. And I'm ending it with Promo of the Year. Let's hit it. I'm not going to keep you in suspense. The best overall wrestler, and a lot of these pictures are going to pop up right here, in theory. By the way, gorgeous day today in the lower 70s. One of my kids is swimming, for crying out loud. And it's so nice outside. My other kid, who tends to be kind of a homebody, was more than willing to come out with us, and you'll see splashing around and stuff in the back. So, awesome stuff. Overall wrestler of the year, Jon Moxley. I don't think there's really a close second. Had the best year. Had the best matches with the most variety of people at the top level. Cut the best promos overall. Really held steadfast, and AEW needed Chris Jericho to be their first champion for credibility's sake. But they needed a wrestler like Jon Moxley this year, desperately. And Jon Moxley certainly fit that bill. Could Jericho have wrestled all the matches that Jon Moxley did? No. Could Jericho have really carried the thing? No. Jericho fulfilled a very different role this year. And I think just as vital to sort of AEW's ascension and maintenance during COVID. But Jon Moxley, what a phenomenal job. Took number one in the PWI 500, whatever that's worth. But more importantly than that, I mean, if somebody had said Moxley was going to be doing the best stuff out of all the members of the Shield, out of, Seth Rollins, who had pretty much a disastrous 2020 for the beginning parts of it. The stuff with The Fiend, so awful, took him out of the running. And then the Roman Reigns stuff has been phenomenal, but has only come on since COVID. Moxley has been there the whole year, doing the most interesting and the greatest stuff. Overall Wrestler of the Year, Jon Moxley. Again, people can complain about this. I don't see how. It's even a debate. It just simply is not. I mean, who else are you going to put up there? Brock Lesnar, who hasn't been there? Goldberg? Braun Strowman. I mean, I can't even get it out without fucking laughing. There's no close. I mean, Adam Cole did great stuff in NXT, but again, as long as NXT is considered a B-list brand by the WWE itself, no matter what they try to say, it's just hard to put him up there. And then, whatever Impact had going on, I mean, Impact had dalliances of Tessa Blanchard being their world champion until she wasn't. And I mean, that whole thing is just such a disaster as it turned out. And then Ring of Honor was Ring of Honor, and NWA was NWA. But Nick Aldis, I mean, their men's title gets way less play than their women's title does. I mean, Thunder Rosa, you could argue, was a bigger MVP for the NWA than Nick Aldis is at this point in the game, and a better ambassador of their brand as it continues. I mean, they've started running shows again, but not that you'd know it, right? Best Technician Award. So John Moxley, overall wrestler. Best Technician Award. Oh boy, here comes another long explanation. This one I sort of bargained with myself and thought about and deliberated quite a bit, right? Timothy Thatcher is a guy I think the world of, who has done great stuff this year. There's my kid in the background. And as far as a technician, I mean, I considered everybody from Angelico, like the guys who would really put that kind of, like a technical wrestling style at the forefront of what they were doing. But again, he's a tag wrestler, and he's considered lower mid-card without that tag team. So I really can't put him up there. Roman's matches you can't call technical. And the guys who would do technical stuff, like AJ Styles, perhaps, just like he's refined his wrestling style, so the technical aspects are far less, right? So I had to sort of deviate my thinking of what best technician means, right? So if Joe Black won it last year in Georgia, and I think he should have won it, once it was pointed out to me by Gary Lamb, that I'm thinking Joe Black for technician, it got us all thinking in a completely different way, right? So allow me to propose this. The best technician under modern standards, because I'm just going to pick somebody who just does these really technical matches, even if they don't really have significance. I am not. So I'm going to pick the guy who was able to wrestle the most different styles of wrestling, and incorporate them effectively, and to do all of those things that a wrestling match is supposed to do, which is to take you on this journey of emotion, no matter what kind of wrestling style they found themselves in. And that is Cody Rhodes, who did a better job working with new guys, who did a better job wrestling everything from hardcore deathmatchy kind of stuff with Eddie Kingston, to technical matches, to carrying guys in the ring and bringing out the best in them, to convincing people that different people had arrived, to wrestling everything from babyface versus babyface matches to all-out slugfest brawls. The matches he had with Brody Lee were incredibly violent and incredibly engaging. But every one of his matches had this in common. The things that he was being asked to execute, and he executed on others and took in return, were all technically done incredibly well. And when he had to do rolling around on the mat stuff, and the fact that he wrestled even Angelico, he wrestled that match, and he wrestled Angelico's match, and it looked great, and he elevated him. And he did that with everybody all year long. He made that TNT title. I'm going to say this, and people are going to get mad, but it's the truth. He took the TNT title and made it the most prestigious secondary title in wrestling, single-handedly. Are you going to tell me the U.S. title means as much as the TNT title? You're crazy. Are you going to tell me the Intercontinental title held by Sami Zayn means as much as the TNT title? You're crazy. Cody Rhodes was the first TNT champion and won it through a technical series of matches of all different stripes and varieties. And he was up to the task of telling all those different kind of stories, whether it was the Eddie Kingston match, whether it was the Ricky Starks match, whether it was the series against Darby Allin, Lance Archer, Sonny Kiss, Angelico, Brody Lee. the more, and then Brody Lee in the rematch in his return. The more I think about it, the more I think that's absolutely the right choice. Cody Rhodes' technician. It was a tour de force of how pro wrestling storytelling and the physicality of it can be done to its highest level. To the point where, remember Cody Rhodes of just a few years ago, where you just thought of him as like an also-ran and unimportant, and okay, he's good at working this crazy Stardust gimmick, but his matches are no great shakes and blah, blah, blah. Those days are gone. Now Cody's the guy that you feel like, I can put him in the ring with literally anybody, and he's going to get a great match out of them. Is there a higher praise for a good hand / technician than that? I don't think so. Male performer, Roman Reigns. His return and his heel work, it is carrying SmackDown almost single-handedly, to the point where people will identify SmackDown as a good show. It's not. But his stuff is so compelling, and it's so all over that show, and it involves Jey Uso, and it involves Kevin Owens, and it involves everybody else that he feuds with, to an extent that he has you convinced that SmackDown is a good show. It is not. It is better than Raw almost exactly by one Roman Reigns. His performance has been nothing less than stellar. His performance is so good that Paul Heyman has to react to it. That Jey Uso is elevated because of it. And everybody who gets involved in Roman Reigns. It's so good. Roman Reigns' performance is so good, no matter what anybody says against it. Even when they're trying to belittle it, it doesn't diminish it. Because it's so strong that any attempts to diminish it feel futile. The WWE can't even screw this one up at this point. We'll see if that happens. But Roman Reigns for now, he is clearly the performer of the year. A performance so strong it carries entire segments by itself. Entire matches where they barely do anything physical for long stretches of a time, and it's held together exclusively by what? His performance. Roman Reigns is the male performer of the year. And now in Georgia, we have any number of people you can put up. And by no small coincidence, a lot of them are in the most improved category as well. Could it be, Steve, that performing better, doing a better performance overall, and a gimmick work overall, can also lend itself towards being most improved? Aha. Hold My Beer Hansen, Tyler Culprit, right? David Ali, the Queen of Barnesville, Simon Sermon, last year's winner, Matt Sells. Boy, that's a category for male performer that used to be, we were scraping to really find somebody who would fit the bill. Or it was Shadow Jackson's to lose or Simon Sermon's to lose. Now it feels like it's wide open, and that's exciting. I'll tell you, the Georgia scene in its own way as a microcosm have much more viable contenders for male performer of the year than wrestling in general does. I mean, if I had to scrape and say guys like Otis, I mean, doesn't your stomach immediately recoil and wrench? It does. But any of the ones I would name for male performer of the year for Georgia Wrestling History Awards, you would be like, yeah, if that guy won it, I'd be okay with it. Yeah. Kudos to all the people who would be up for performer, male performer. Female performer, Sasha Banks. You could make different arguments. I'm sure there would be a number of people that I considered, but at the end of the day, I think Sasha Banks has proven herself to be the most viable overall female performer. She won the feud with Bayley, and since then has gone on. I mean, they're banking an entire thing with Camille just on the strength of Sasha Banks. That's the only reason that thing might work, is because Camille can just bounce off of how over and how prominent Sasha Banks is. And the Sasha Banks and Bayley feud, hinged on two great performers working together, both when they were a tag team and sort of dominating everything, and then once the split happened, it hinges on people have to believe that they have to believe in Sasha Banks, and she's taken over that mantle of the one the fans most believe in, and that's in all of wrestling. So Sasha Banks, what can I say? The Ted Allen Legends Award. People might say, "Oh, Pat Patterson," right? I'm going to use this as a bit of a platform, and I'm going to say it's Kamala. Kamala to me is a reminder of what wrestling once was, and the absence of a Kamala or this kind of gimmick. Some people would say as a positive. I see it as an incredible negative. The awesomeness of Kamala, and even picking the picture that I was going to use was interesting, because there was all these great shots of him lifting Hogan in a choke, or him freaking with the spear. But I picked this one because it's one of the most shocking wrestling magazine covers ever, right? And it shows just how over that gimmick was and how it drew ridiculous money. But it's also a reminder of wrestling's days gone by, where the guys were taken advantage of as well. And so I thought it was important to put him here. Not only because he is a legend, not only because he was a viable part of the wrestling community and in the WWF and also in, UWF and World Class and all of that good stuff, but it's a reminder of the things that were great about pro wrestling and also horrible about pro wrestling that do not exist anymore. But that's not to say that we can't get the good parts back, and we shouldn't let the bad parts stay away. I wanted to put him here because I think the Ted Allen Legends Award is symbolic as much as it is about the person being honored. When you look at past winners, right, Bill Behrens, Rick Michaels, Ted Allen himself, Terry Lawler, and you look at the people that could win it in the Larry Goodman, of course, and you look at the people that would be up for it. My personal feeling is this year it's probably Ox's to lose. And seeing Ox again at that Southern Honor Show really put this into focus for me of, man, this guy, not only is he the eyes and ears of Georgia wrestling, he's such a viable part. It's more than the ring that gets delivered. And I think anybody who has dealt with Ox and his crew would totally agree with that. Whether it's, AWE or Action or me in the past or Southern Honor, anybody who's dealt with Ox understands his very vital part in the Georgia wrestling scene. And, Kamala nationally, put it this way, to me, when you look at the guys who would be up for the Legend Award, right? There's guys who are going to win it inevitably, like Jeff G. Bailey, right? And then there's the guys who, the boys have such a fondness for, like Iceberg. And then you have Ox. I mean, all incredibly great contenders for it. But if you got to get more than 50% of the vote, and last year it came down to a vote, right? But Larry Goodman won it. I think there will be a rallying cry for Ox to get the votes this year, and I think that's a good thing. And Kamala's never going to get, they barely put his picture up on WWE. Pat Patterson, they devoted huge amounts of TV time and all these great clip packages, and I'm not saying it wasn't deserved. I'm just saying it's very telling that Kamala couldn't even get his graphic up on all three shows. I think there's something tragic about that, and it's a part of pro wrestling that I hope dies forever, which is the mistreatment of the wrestlers. And something I hope that comes back, which is gimmicks that are kind of awesome in the real definition of that word. Awe-inspiring, larger than life, mysterious, and crazy, and wacky, because that is pro wrestling too. And I hope we never forget that. Tag team or stable? I'm an asshole. I have a couple of ties in a couple of these categories just because it was just too hard to make the call. And again, I mean, what do these really mean anyway? All right, kid, I'm working. Yes, enjoy your stick. Two. You know what? God, it's such a hard call. You know what? I'm not going to wuss out. I'm just going to pick one. Because for one of them, I'm going to have two, and I'm not going to apologize for it. I can't have two for more than one category. So I'm just going to have to make a call. I'm going to say Undisputed Era. They've held the NXT brand together, and they continue to hold it together through all of this. They've been in every single war game that they've done, and the work they've done is consistently great. And Adam Cole is considered one of the best wrestlers in the world, and I think Kyle O'Reilly's getting there. It's a great place for Roderick Strong. I think it works towards his assets and hides his weaknesses. I think the Undisputed Era is really, really fantastic. And I know a lot of people might go like, well, I'm kind of tired of seeing, but honestly, it's one of these where the combination of the group is stronger than the individual parts. And to me, that's the very definition of a powerful stable, is when the idea of all of them together feels very permanent, and it feels like it's elevating the entire company through its mere presence. And so tag team or stable, I'm going to go with Undisputed Era. I will say that the one I was considering the most strongly was, of course, Retribution. Fucking kidding. It was the Hurt Business. But I'm going to give the Hurt Business their due in another category. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So I'll just going to save it for that. But I'll say Undisputed Era for tag team or stable. Now in the Georgia scene, this is where I think this is one of the weaker categories. Obviously, the Lynches won it last year, undeservedly so. And this year, I think you could argue the Lynches would be up for it again. And the Beautiful Bald Besties, who have showed up to wrestle on show after show and continue to just do great work. Beyond that, I mean, we didn't hear from, a lot of the groups that have been prominent the last couple of years. This year they were silent because of COVID. And so if AWE's not running shows, then that clique is not running not being seen and not doing their thing. I mean, you can make an argument for the Approved, right? Todd's faction. I don't know. And of course, Undisputed, right? Who seem to be running roughshod all over the place. Maybe the Undisputed, for tag team or stable. I don't know. It's interesting to think about, but I'm just going to go Undisputed Era for the national and international scene. Most Improved Wrestler Award. This one's going to probably catch you by surprise. Bayley. When Charlotte went down and Asuka lost Kairi Sane, that could have immediately destroyed sort of the wrestling end of the show. But the Bayley and Sasha thing carried it. And people said, oh, they were around and they were on every brand. Yeah, they had to be. Charlotte is a big loss when she wasn't there. Huge loss. But nobody talked about the quality of the matches not being good. And that's because Bayley held up her end. In the Sasha feud, with Asuka, and everything else. And Bayley's been asked to wrestle the most varied number of opponents, all the way from green as shit to great as hell. And she's been able to carry the ones that she had to carry and keep up with the ones she needed to keep up with, all while working heel, and all while her ring work has been nothing but crisp and fantastic. Like, I often marvel watching her in matches and go like, look at how smooth she is. She's as good as any woman who has wrestled in the WWE. Yes, including Charlotte. And that is a tall, tall order. So I'm going to give Bayley Most Improved. Plus carrying program segments by her damn self and with Sasha. Just carrying shows by herself. I don't think people realize there was a 3-month stint there where it was Bayley and Sasha carry the world. And they had to do it. And they did it. So they deserve that credit. I mean, while SmackDown was doing Braun Strowman Fiend nonsense shitting up our television, and while they were trying to establish Drew Galloway, and Edge and Randy Orton were boring the world, it was Sasha and Bayley who were carrying that programming. Most improved as far as Georgia goes, there's so many to name, and they're all great, and I've already talked about them. Moving on. Best manager or valet. This is the one where I'm going to indulge myself by saying two. It's the Hurt Business led by MVP. Yes, I'm saying MVP is the best manager. His promos are super tight. He gets there in the ring when something has to be put over effectively. He takes the hit for his guys, in essence. And the Hurt Business, who are relegated to nothing status, but MVP will not allow them to stay there. Will not allow it. Whether it's feuding with Retribution or whatever black guys they're having the Hurt Business feud with. That stuff should feel unsettling to us, but it doesn't, because MVP manages on the microphone to make these things important. Through different vignettes that they do in the back, he's clearly the voice for the Hurt Business, but his goal is clear. I want all of these guys to get over individually, and he works very hard to that effect. And the Hurt Business has been one of the few bright spots and stable things happening on Raw that you can count on at least delivering their end effectively. And they need that on Raw more than they've ever needed it. So, definitely MVP, manager for the Hurt Business. And also, Taz. It's a bit of a surprise I'm saying it, but not really. His mic stuff has been strong. He's had some of the lines of the year where the people realize, calling WWE, basically the sloppy shop thing, which it was one of these things that worked on multiple levels and also was a shot. It's sort of this thing of like, AEW does stuff better than you guys, sort of being unafraid. His persona, that Taz persona, sort of permeating everything. And now this Taz clique that he's formed, which is the foil for Sting. People forget that like, it's the foil for Sting's entrance and appearances so far has been about responding to Taz and his group, which means Taz and his group are real enough and important enough and significant enough that they can play off of that. And part of Darby's success or failure as TNT champion is going to hinge on the things he's doing with Taz, Ricky Starks, Brian Cage, right? Will Hobbs now is being part of that group, and Taz is doing a great job of making sure he's featured prominently, and then eventually his son Hook. Good stuff by Taz. And his mic work, when his guys were left off of the pay-per-view, his mic work made it seem like they were on the pay-per-view because it was so good, and his complaints seemed so legitimate. So I'm going to say MVP, and I'm going to say Taz. That's going to be my only tie, I swear. Next. Best Promoter Award. It's Tony Khan. Ouch. Does that hurt? It's Tony Khan. Who's made the brand more prominent? Who's taken them to the point where they're beating Raw in demographics? Does anybody ever imagine this was going to happen? And you might say, well, it's just because Raw has fallen so far. Well, yeah. That would seem to indicate that whoever's promoting that is not doing a great job, right? Tony Khan. AEW is a clear contender against the WWE when they're a company that's a small fraction of the size. They take up at least half of the wrestling news cycle. Tony Khan shows up in those commercials on Impact, and he's the funniest and best part of that gig. They all say his name on AEW, and while that drives people crazy, it's sort of undeniable what a good job he's done promoting. AEW is a real deal. It's a presence on YouTube. And their show has been re-upped for years. Tony Khan's your promoter of the year. And might as well get to this. And in Georgia, That's going to be one of these wide open debates. It's Gary Lamb's to lose, I'll say that. Now, best booker. On the Georgia scene, it's Ace, it's Todd, it's Dylan. And that debate is going to rage. But in wrestling, on the national and international level, it's Tony Khan again. With the people that help him do it. Whether it's QT or the prominent guys who are VPs, right? Cody, Kenny Omega, the Bucks, whatever, chiming in. But at the end of the day, I was almost going to award this to no one, but then I realized, what's the show that's doing the best job building stories, building wrestlers, and appears to be gaining momentum? It's not NXT. It's certainly not fucking Raw, and it's not SmackDown. It's AEW. They're gaining momentum. They're gaining viewers. They maintained 100,000 pay-per-view buys minimum for their pay-per-views where people had to pay this year. They've taken the most chances, and most of those have paid off. And that's all booking stuff, guys. They don't spend half of their show promoting the other half of the show like WWE products. They spend half of their show promoting future shows and pay-per-views. They know what their cards are before they happen. They're able to announce entire cards. It's a great job. And I know that pains people to hear it, pains people to experience it. Oh well, I'm not here to alleviate pain. I'm here to speak the truth as I see it. Tony Khan is your Booker of the Year. Best promotion? AEW. It's the one that even people who don't like it will admit it's confounding, but it's not boring. WWE has gotten the worst label imaginable put on it. Raw is too long, I just can't make it through. NXT's fine and they have good matches, but there's nothing sexy about it. And SmackDown is Roman Reigns and the Pips. But AEW, where would Jim Cornette be without AEW? He tried to say he wasn't going to watch it anymore, but guess what? Nobody gives a fuck. Cornette needs AEW because it is the promotion of the year. Because to not talk about it feels remiss. And if there is no bigger definition, I don't know what is. To not talk about AEW as somebody who is in wrestling feels remiss. It feels like that you're missing the story if you don't talk about them. And that's a successful promotion. Yeah? We can talk about money made, money lost. At the end of the day, everybody knows WWE is only viable because they have these contracts. That in the absence of those contracts, if they had to fend week by week for themselves, they'd be dead. And that's why they're pushing panic buttons. Everything the WWE does now feels like it is done out of weakness. And what AEW does is done out of strength. When you promote for the long term. When you make moves. Right? Their moves are not made out of desperation. They're made out of strength. And that means they're the best promotion to me. Best Live Event Award. This one's a little weird. It's Wrestle Kingdom 14 from New Japan at the beginning of the year. For a lot of reasons. The way they handled the Liger retirement thing. The individual matches are really, really great. I don't really go in for a ton of wrestling from Japan, even New Japan. But I check out Wrestle Kingdom every year. And this year it delivered the goods both nights, I thought. And again, these are my awards, right? So it is the show that I enjoyed the most overall watching, nationally or internationally. I mean, what else do you want to say? I mean, there were a couple of AEW pay-per-views that I thought were very good. One or two NXT shows that I really enjoyed. But at the end of the day, Wrestle Kingdom felt like they got the most big things right. Plus, they had the advantage of they were still performing in front of crowds. And going back and looking at that, man, it's really hard to pick a show that's not in front of a real crowd. Because the difference that it makes, I think maybe there's some people that have even forgotten how significant that is to have a crowd. And again, that's not WWE or AEW's fault necessarily. Of course not, that they had to do shows during COVID with limited to no crowds. But man, seeing the reactions to stuff at Wrestle Kingdom, it was awesome. And so it's my choice for best live event. Best announcer, it's a weird one. Samoa Joe, I just like him. Uh, he says stuff, and 9 times out of 10, I go like, it was either that was the right thing to say, or that was a really cool thing to say that I didn't even think of. I think he lends a lot of credibility to the brand that needs it the most, which is Raw. I mean, he's the one that has to find justifications for the stupid shit that they book. And he manages to do it. Nobody works harder than Samoa Joe, word for word. I'm going to say word for word, the best announcer / commentator going right now, because he's having to do the heavy lifting. I like that team in general. I like Tom and I like Byron Saxton, but I think Samoa Joe, without Samoa Joe, it's unbearable. With Samoa Joe, it manages to be really good. So Samoa Joe, best announcer of the year. In Georgia, we have commentator teams that do a really good job, and then we have Diana and Michelle, a ring announcer, and one of them is going to win it. And I think I'm interested to see the arguments that people are going to make and the kind of footage they're going to put up to try to make an argument for themselves. To me, it's Diana and Michelle's to lose. We shall see. But Samoa Joe for national. Best referee, Aubrey Edwards. I don't think there's even a close second. There's a lot of referees who do a really good job, but there's no referee that's done a better job branding themselves and playing the right mix of serious and authority. And in AEW, you have to do that doubly so, because often it appears, especially in tag matches, where it's like, what the fuck? This is just a fucking cluster. And the way that Jericho plays his thing, she's the only one who stands up to him in the correct way that feels legitimate. And she's also done the best job of branding herself out of any of the referees from the other things that she does. Aubrey Edwards is, I think, a runaway choice for referee of the year. In Georgia, man, you got a lot of great referees. It's really the salad days. It's really good stuff. You know, you could only imagine if Dee and Kendall were still doing their thing. My God, it'd be like referee heaven. Yeah, and Dustin. Cool. We're getting there, guys. Feud. It's WWE versus AEW. Isn't this a cool little graphic I found? It's wild, right, that they flipped them. It's the only feud worth talking about. Let's be real. Right? The different aspects of the feud. Now, thanks to AEW demographics, it's a discussion that we have. And now they've done something that nobody has been able to do to the WWE/F since maybe WCW, which is to move the terms of the argument to demographics. They're the only, and they feel like they're ascending as the WWE is descending. It's the WWE who makes decisions out of weakness. It's AEW that's making decisions out of strength. For all of the, I mean, they don't get the ratings that TNA did at their height, but it doesn't matter in the sense that they're winning the argument, which is what you got to do.
Yep, I agree. Cystic.
Nice. My children. WWE versus AEW is the exciting thing to think about, to talk about. From the direct, and WWE makes moves based on AEW. They broke their long-standing policy of not talking about the competition, and it has been to their detriment. They put NXT up there, and NXT is losing by any objective account to AEW, and it's hurt WWE. And now it's opened them up to the discussion of, well, AEW is beating Raw in ratings when you look at demographics. I mean, these are things that were unthinkable a year ago. And AEW has done this in a year. It's the only feud worth talking about. It's the only feud I want to talk about. WWE versus AEW. Now in Georgia, it's a different thing. Is it Todd versus Manders? Is it Huck Joe? Because again, that took place at the beginning of the year, you know? Is it the thing that Ace Haven has come up with? I don't know. But those debates are going to happen. And I'm looking forward to people making arguments either way as far as the Georgia scene goes. But as far as national or international, if you want to argue for something, it's going to have to be something really esoteric, right? It's going to have to be like COVID versus wrestling to get my attention. Otherwise, it's WWE versus AEW. Absolutely is. Match. Oh boy, people are going to give me shit. It's the Iron Man death match between John Wade Murdoch and Oren Veit from ICW's show here in Florida. I've never fucking seen anything like it. I've seen a lot of wrestling. I've booked a lot of wrestling. I've participated in some deathmatchy stuff. That's a story for another time. But I've never seen two guys go at it for 60 plus minutes. Keep in mind it was a tie, one fall apiece, so they had an overtime. The things I saw in that match, the way that these guys were able to construct the match in such a way that it was viable, that it never felt like it slowed down, it never felt like it was... I can't explain it if you haven't fucking seen it, and if you haven't fucking seen it, go to the fucking thing and go watch it. Iron Man Deathmatch, John Wayne Murdoch, and Oren. This is going to shock a lot of people. It might even shock Jeff G. Bailey, who was there watching it with me, that I would pick this, but I was taken with it. It's been a long time since wrestling's made me feel that way. Of this, like, my God, these guys are doing this tightrope act, and they're not going to be able to pull it off. And then they pull it off, and then they exceed expectations. It's fucking unbelievable. That's your match of the year. For Georgia, I'm curious what the matches are that people are going to put up. We're going to put those up. Everyone's going to get to look at them, and then we're going to have 3 nominees out of that. And that's well and good. But I'll tell you, nobody can convince me that this was not match of the year overall. And if somebody wants to make an argument with me, I go ahead and I'll watch the match. And I'll try to keep as open-minded as I can. But I was there for this shit, and it was fucking unbelievable. And I hope that those guys, and I hope ICW and the people associated with it, hear me say this shit, because it was fucking awesome. Cool. And last but not least, promo of the year. Another new category for Georgia wrestling history, and I know there's going to be a number of great contenders, and people are going to put promos up. I think we're going to open it up that it doesn't have to just be an in-ring during a show promo, but it can be a promo outside of that. So you're going to have any number of guys. Joe Black, of course, first name that pops into your mind, but, you know, Tyler Culprit did his thing. I think Hold My Beer Hansen did his thing. I think David Ali most certainly did his thing. And then there's any number of great promos that we didn't get to hear that are going to come out. And then people are going to be able to hear them and get a little bit of the context in which they took place. And any of those could capture our imagination. Wicked Nemesis did some great stuff as well. So I'm curious to see. And then Matt Hankins, and holy shit, the more you think about it, the more that could be up for promo of the year. What about in wrestling? There's only one promo, and I'm going to end this video with that promo. There's only one promo that changed how wrestling works. There's only one promo that made you feel validated as a wrestling person. There's only one promo that happened that literally got somebody a fucking job and rose them to prominence to the main event of that promotion. And that's Eddie Kingston's first promo. Eddie Kingston's first promo in AEW wrestling is by far the promo of the year. It's an amazing piece of work, and it's amazing the things that he touched on. And Eddie Kingston has an ability on the microphone to make all the other noise go away. And you focus on what he's saying, and it invokes things in here, and more importantly in here. He puts you under the ether, and you just experience what he's saying. And then it feels real to you. This promo is absolutely incredible. Anyway, this has been Every Cloud Has a Platinum Lining. This video is very long, I know, but I'm excited. I wanted to talk about the national wrestling scene, which I don't do except in those show recaps. So I kind of wanted to do that here as well. And give my thoughts about 2020, who I thought deserved what award. But I'm going to leave you with that Eddie Kingston promo. And especially young wrestlers, you don't have this in you yet. But your goal is to get there where you can. This has been Stephen Platinum. Take it away, Eddie.
No! 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 We're gonna get this right. We're gonna do this
Eddie Kingston. He's one of the dirtiest fighters in independent wrestling.
You talk about grinding. You talk about living this rough life, all that jazz. No one's gonna outgrind you, all that stuff. My man, it's easy to say that when you grew up around used to be legends like Arn Anderson. Yeah, you heard me. Keep shooting murder ones at me, and I'll knock your jaw right off your face, partner. You know what I grew up around? You know what I grew up around? Alcoholics, junkies. I grew up around that, and I had to survive. I had to grind. You couldn't last a day in my shoes. So you don't tell me nothing about grinding. You talk about the sport of pro wrestling? That's a joke. Because every person you faced has been a child. I am a grown-ass man, and I will put you in the ground and smile. But here's the best part about this whole thing. The guy that you like to mention because you like to be best friends with the boss, Tony Khan, paid me to show up. And now he's gonna pay me to kick your ass and take that championship. Oh yeah, you wanna go? But check the Arn, I swear on my beautiful mother's eyes, if you don't shut up, I'm gouging your eye out. All right? Let me speak. Yeah. It's my time now. Real easy, relax. You've had yours. Tony Khan said to me, you know what, King? If you want to know DQ, man, that's fine by me. Just, you know, Cody has to accept. You have to accept, because either you're an egg-sucking dog or you're an egg-sucking bitch. Oh my God, I said something.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's confirmed this will be a no disqualification match. Introducing the challenger.